Welcome back to the Metabolic Compass podcast, where we recalibrate your biology and rediscover your direction. I'm your host, Brandon Soyko. If you've ever followed a health plan to the letter, only to feel worse, more fragile, or like your body betrayed you, you're not alone. For too long, women have been told they're too sensitive, too hormonal, or not trying hard enough. But here's the truth. Most wellness programs weren't designed for women. They were designed around women, skipping the most critical factor of all, your biology. Today, we're going to unpack what actually works when it comes to supporting female physiology. We'll talk about why certain popular trends backfire, how your cycle shifts to what your body needs week to week, and what the Compass approach does differently. So you're not stuck in a plan that pushes when your biology needs to pause. Because syncing with your biology isn't a weakness, it's your greatest advantage. Let's begin with the uncomfortable truth. Most of the health, fitness, and biohacking advice floating around today was built on a male blueprint. That's not a conspiracy, it's just history. The majority of clinical studies on nutrition, exercise, and even medication dosing have been conducted on men or on women at one fixed point in their cycle, usually the follicular phase, when estrogen is high and more closely mimics male physiology. That means entire strategies from fasting protocols to HIIT regimens have been optimized for a body that operates on a 24-hour hormonal rhythm. But here's the thing. Most women don't operate on a 24-hour clock. Your biology follows a roughly 28-day cycle with hormonal phases that influence everything from metabolism and inflammation to mood and mitochondrial function. If we don't account for that, you end up in a plan that works against your physiology during key phases of the month and then get blamed for not doing it right. So let's look at a few real examples. Take intermittent fasting. It can be a useful tool. But in women with low energy availability, high stress, or entering perimenopause, it often makes things worse. That's because estrogen and progesterone interact with insulin and cortisol very differently depending on where you are in your cycle. Fasting too aggressively in the luteal phase, when your body is preparing for potential implantation, can tank progesterone, elevate cortisol, and cause a massive blood sugar crash. That leads to mood swings, poor sleep, and a metabolic stress spiral. Or look at high-intensity interval training, HIIT. It's great for stimulating growth hormone and improving cardiovascular efficiency, but studies show that women in mid-luteal phase experience higher perceived exertion, slower recovery, and greater muscle breakdown post-HIIT compared to follicular phase sessions. That's not laziness, it's a biological mismatch. And then there's the blanket advice to eat keto, lift heavier, or cut out carbs. For women in their reproductive years, especially under chronic stress, these approaches can disrupt ovulation, blunt thyroid function, and compound burnout. Not because the tools are inherently bad, but because they're being misapplied without regard for the rhythmic changes happening every month. This isn't about creating fear around exercise or nutrition. It's about creating alignment. Women aren't too complicated. Your hormonal rhythm is not a liability. It's a built-in signal system, one that tells us exactly when your body is primed to push and when it needs to replenish. But when your plan ignores those signals, the body doesn't adapt, it resists. And that resistance shows up as symptoms: fatigue, cravings, anxiety, poor recovery, menstrual irregularity, and a deep sense that your body is no longer cooperating. So let's reframe this. You are not too sensitive. You're biologically cyclical, and any plan that fails to honor that is destined to fail you. In the Compass framework, we start by asking not what's the best protocol, but what phase is your biology in, because that answer changes what your body needs and changes how sustainable the result will be. And this brings us to the most misunderstood truth in all of women's health. Your biology isn't broken, it's cyclical. Once we stop treating those rhythms like a problem to fix and start treating them like a map to follow, everything else changes. Let's break this down. Because if we're going to rebuild a model that works for women, we need to understand the system it's built around. At the core of female physiology is a monthly cycle, not just reproductive readiness, but a full body biological shifts that affect your brain, immune system, gut, and mitochondria. We're talking about 4 distinct phases, each with its own hormonal signature and metabolic preferences. First, we have the follicular phase. This begins on the first day of your period and lasts until ovulation, roughly days 1 to 14, though cycle length can vary. Estrogen starts low, then rises steadily. This is a time when energy builds, mood lifts, and your body becomes more insulin sensitive. You may feel sharper, stronger, and more motivated to take on new challenges. It's a great time for heavier workouts, creative problem solving, and even dietary tightening if needed. Estrogen is like your internal amplifier. It primes your brain and muscles to respond more efficiently. Then comes ovulation, the midpoint of your cycle, when an egg is released. Estrogen peaks, testosterone surges slightly, and many women feel their most magnetic, outgoing, and energetic during this window. But it's short, just a few days, and it's followed by a very different landscape. Enter the luteal phase. This is the second half of your cycle, post-ovulation, when progesterone takes the lead. Progesterone is calming, anti-inflammatory, and geared toward restoration, but it also shifts how your body handles stress, carbs, and recovery. You become more insulin resistant, more sensitive to cortisol spikes, and less tolerant of intense physical or dietary stress. Your appetite may increase, sleep may become lighter, and your immune system changes its priorities, pulling resources away from surveillance and toward repair. And finally, if pregnancy doesn't occur, both estrogen and progesterone drop off sharply, leading into menstruation, where inflammation rises and the body sheds the uterine lining. Many women feel a dip in energy, mood, and motivation here. Your metabolism is upregulated during this phase, which means you actually need more nutrients, not less. And yet, how many plans ask women to restrict or push harder during this time? That's the mismatch. Now here's the key. Across this 28-day rhythm, your energy levels, appetite, recovery capacity, immune resilience, and even gut motility naturally shift. This isn't a flaw, it's intelligence. It's your body adapting to a different set of needs each week. But most health plans ignore these shifts. They treat every day the same, or worse, they ask you to power through when your biology is signaling a clear need to pivot. And that leads to burnout, feeling like you're doing everything right but getting punished for it. To the weight gain, poor sleep, anxiety spikes, cycle chaos, and the frustration of wondering what's wrong with your body. But nothing is wrong. The problem is the plan, not your physiology. The solution isn't to slow down your cycle, it's to sync with it. Imagine approaching your month with a rotating toolkit, pushing and performing during your follicular and ovulatory phases, then shifting to replenishment and restoration during your luteal and menstrual phases. That's what builds resilience. That's what aligns with your actual biology, not just a spreadsheet or a trend. In the Compass model, this is where domain-based timing becomes powerful. For example, your luteal phase may call for more nurture support, gut healing, nervous system scaffolding, and sleep prioritization, whereas your follicular phase might be a time to lean into Energize, fueling mitochondria, rebuilding muscle, and taking on cognitive challenges. Once you understand the rhythm, you can match the reset. No more guessing, no more blaming your hormones, just a system that finally meets your body where it actually is. Coming up next, we'll walk through each of the 4 Compass domains, nurture, energize, strengthen, and withdraw, and explore how each one intersects with the female cycle in ways most health plans completely miss. So now that we understand the cyclical nature of female physiology, let's layer in the Compass model, because this is where the magic happens. Each of the 4 Compass domains, nurture, energize, strengthen, and withdraw, represent a biological terrain your body must move through to maintain health. But what's often missed is that the menstrual cycle naturally guides you through all 4 of these terrains every single month. Let's start with the luteal phase, which begins right after ovulation. This is where the nurture domains take center stage. Progesterone rises, your immune system becomes more reactive, and your gut becomes more sensitive to stress, food irritants, and inflammation. You may feel more introverted, less tolerant of chaos, and in need of rest. This is not the time to double down on fasting, HIIT workouts, or caffeine-fueled to-do lists. It's the time to support your gut-liver immune axis, stabilize blood sugar, and protect your nervous system. You need to prioritize butyrate, magnesium, zinc carnosine, and the kinds of polyphenols that calm your reactivity, not stack more stress. In Compass terms, your body is asking, am I safe? And your job is to say yes through your actions. Then comes menstruation, the actual shedding phase. Hormones drop off, inflammation spikes briefly, and your body begins a deep repair cycle. This is where the withdrawal domain becomes most relevant. Withdrawal isn't about quitting. It's about clearing, pruning, and restoring clarity. Biologically, this is a time when autophagy kicks in, when your brain craves stillness, and when your body benefits most from gentle movement, mineral replenishment, and intentional reflection. Trying to power through this phase can backfire, leading to heavier periods, worsening cramps, and deeper fatigue. Instead, this is the time to honor rest as strategy. Pull back, not out of weakness, but out of alignment. Then we move into the follicular phase. This is your body's green light. Estrogen rises, inflammation drops, and you're more insulin sensitive, cognitively sharp, and physically resilient. This is the domain of Energize. Your mitochondria are primed, your fuel systems are flexible, and your nervous system is more adaptable. This is the window to lean in, to lift heavier, build capacity, take on new challenges, or implement biohacks that would be stressful in other phases. But here's the nuance. Just because you feel good doesn't mean it's a license to burn out. What you do in the follicular phase should build fuel for the second half of your cycle, not drain you before you get there. Now let's talk about ovulation, a brief but powerful window. This is your physiological peak, and it's an extension of the Energize domain. Testosterone rises slightly, estrogen peaks, and your mood, libido, and performance tend to spike. Because this phase is short-lived, it's important not to cram everything into it. Instead, see it as your launch pad, a moment to bank momentum that you'll carry into the next domain. Throughout the entire cycle, we have the constant influence of strengthening. This domain is about structural integrity, muscle, bone, micronutrients, and connective tissue. Unlike others, it doesn't peak at any one point. It's your foundation. But even here, your needs shift with your cycle. You may be stronger and more anabolic during the follicular and ovulatory phases, while requiring more support and repair in the luteal and menstrual phases. Here's why all this matters. Most women are unknowingly misaligning their actions with their cycle. They're trying to push when their biology is asking them to pause. They're cutting calories or carbs during the luteal phase, even though that increases cortisol and disrupts sleep. They're training hard during menstruation and wondering why recovery feels impossible. And they're blaming themselves for inconsistency when in reality, their plan was never built to work with their biology. But when you align each phase with the compass domain, everything begins to click. The luteal phase becomes a time to nurture. Menstruation becomes a time to withdraw and reset. Follicular and ovulation become a time to energize and perform. And strengthen is the through line, helping you build resilience that lasts beyond any single phase. So if aligning with your cycle gives you a biological tailwind, what happens when the rhythm breaks down? What does it look like when the compass map is still there, but the signals are scrambled? That's exactly what we're exploring next. When your cycle starts to drift, the signs are rarely subtle. It might start with a bit more irritability before your period, a little more fatigue after ovulation, a heavier flow than usual. But over time, those small signs accumulate into something louder, something that makes it harder to function, harder to plan, and harder to feel at home in your own body. Let's call it what it is, a broken rhythm. For some women, that looks like classic PMS, the emotional roller coasters that hit days before your period with bloating, mood swings, and cravings that feel like they come from nowhere. For others, it escalates into PMDD, where the emotional and cognitive symptoms are so severe they mimic depression or anxiety. Then there's the physical side. Painful periods, clotting, headaches, breast tenderness, and cramping so intense it wipes out your whole day or several days. These aren't just bad periods. These are signs that your internal compass is misreading signals. You might also see this as irregular or disappearing cycles, especially under chronic stress, undereating, or overtraining. The body interprets that as unsafe terrain and presses pause on reproduction. This is especially common in high-achieving women where stress is worn like a badge, but the cost is hormonal resilience. Then there are the less obvious symptoms: fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, sugar cravings, or blood sugar crashes that sneak up in the luteal phase. Often, these get brushed off as willpower problems or just part of being a woman. But in reality, there's evidence of disrupted hormonal orchestration. For women entering their 30s and 40s, the picture begins to shift again. These are the early signs of perimenopause: hot flashes, night sweats, stubborn weight gain, mood volatility, irregular cycles, and waking up at 3 a.m. wired with anxiety. But here's what's so often missed. This phase can last 10 plus years, and it's not a light switch, it's a dimmer. And how you manage it isn't about suppressing the symptoms, it's about understanding the rhythm beneath them. So what's breaking the rhythm? First, chronic stress, emotional, physical, and even biochemical, throws off your brain's hormonal command center, the hypothalamus. It alters the delicate dance between cortisol, estrogen, and progesterone. When cortisol is always spiking, progesterone becomes collateral damage. That's a big deal, because progesterone is your calming, stabilizing hormone. Without it, estrogen becomes unopposed, and that's when you get the heavy, painful, or emotionally overwhelming symptoms. Second, gut dysfunction plays a huge role. An inflamed gut means more circulating endotoxins, higher histamine, and poorer clearance of hormone metabolites, especially estrogen. If your microbiome is imbalanced, or if you're constipated, estrogen doesn't leave the body the way it should. Instead, it recycles. That's how estrogen dominance shows up, even if your levels are technically normal. Third, blood sugar instability. When your glucose is swinging up and down all day, insulin resistance quietly starts building, and that directly affects your sex hormones. Women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, know this story all too well. But even women without PCOS can experience cycle irregularity, poor ovulation, or mid-cycle crashes because their cells can't hear insulin clearly anymore. And finally, circadian mismatch. Light at the wrong time, caffeine too early or too late, and inconsistent sleep routines all confuse your internal timekeepers. And your hormones are nothing if not time-sensitive. Melatonin, cortisol, estrogen, and luteinizing hormone all rely on your biological clock running on schedule. If the clock is off, so are the signals. But here's the key idea. This isn't hormonal failure. This is your body trying to maintain rhythm in a world that no longer respects rhythm. We've removed seasonal cues, flattened daily cycles, suppressed symptoms with birth control or stimulants, and ignored the fact that female physiology was never designed to follow a linear script. So when you feel off, when your cycle is unpredictable, your mood unstable, or your recovery non-existent, it's not because you're broken. It's because your body is trying to self-correct in an environment that's not giving it the inputs it needs. If rhythm disruption isn't a sign of failure, but rather a mismatch between inputs and biology, then how do we give the body what it's actually asking for? That's what we're going to cover now: how to align your health strategy with your hormonal compass. The most effective strategies for women's health aren't the loudest, trendiest, or most extreme. They're the ones that listen to physiology instead of overriding it, and that's exactly what the Metabolic Compass was designed to do. Let's walk through how each compass domain offers a different layer of support depending on where you are in your cycle, and how small changes, done with the right timing, can restore rhythm without creating overwhelm. Nurture, supporting the terrain. The luteal phase, those 10 to 14 days before your period, is when the nurture domain becomes your closest ally. This is when inflammation tends to spike, gut permeability worsens, and your brain becomes more sensitive to stress. Your strategy here isn't to push harder, it's to rebuild safety signals. That means using gut-lever tools that reduce internal noise and support estrogen clearance. Butyrate, especially as Biomend, L-lysine butyrate, has been shown to enhance gut barrier function and downregulate inflammatory pathways. Magnesium, which often drops in the luteal phase, helps stabilize mood, reduce cramps, and support GABA activation. And polyphenols like quercetin, EGCG, and resveratrol help modulate histamine and calm immune reactivity, which is often heightened during this time. This is the time to emphasize soothing, stabilizing inputs, not restrictive diets or detox gimmicks. Energize, fueling the follicular phase. Once your period ends and the follicular phase begins, your body is primed for resilience and growth. Estrogen rises, mitochondria work more efficiently, your brain is more outward focused and creative. Here, you can leverage the Energize domain to support performance and mood. Focus on protein pacing, spreading high-quality protein evenly across meals to support neurotransmitters and ovulation readiness. Add in B vitamins, especially B6, B12, and folate, which are vital for neurotransmitter synthesis and hormone metabolism. Morning light exposure helps recalibrate circadian rhythms and energizes mitochondrial output, crucial for this phase. This is when you have the green light to increase intensity, but only if recovery and fuel match your output. Withdrawal, rhythm, and reset. The menstrual phase is the natural moment for withdrawal and repair. This is when progesterone and estrogen drop to their lowest levels, inflammation is more noticeable, and your energy may dip. The withdrawal domain focuses on autophagy, reflection, and metabolic reset. This is a window to experiment with circadian alignment, early dinners, screen dimming, and gentle routines. Some women do well with fasting mimicking strategies here, not full fast, but lighter evening meals and longer overnight gaps that give the body room to clear cellular debris. Most importantly, this is a pause, not a punishment. Your body is not broken, it's pruning, shedding, and preparing. Think of this as your biological off-season, a chance to downshift and rebuild, not a time to double down on stressors. Strengthen, the steady builder. While nurture, energize, and withdraw fluctuate with your cycle, the strengthen domain offers a through line, the consistent input that builds structure, resilience, and recovery across all phases. Resistance training should be adapted to energy and recovery capacity, but not abandoned. Women can build muscle and bone strength more effectively when workouts align with the follicular window and taper slightly during the luteal and menstrual phases. Nutrients like selenium for thyroid and immune function, iron, especially for menstruating women, and omega-3 fatty acids to reduce prostaglandin-induced cramping are key players here. This is also where consistency pays off. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be attuned. Less is more when the timing is right. The biggest trap women fall into is assuming that more effort equals better results. But during high symptom phases like late luteal or menstruation, pushing harder can create backlash. More fatigue, more inflammation, more frustration. The solution? Do less, but do it at the right time. The Compass framework isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about choosing what matters most for your biology right now. That's how resilience builds. Not from overhauling everything, but from syncing your system and learning how to ride the rhythm. Once we've learned how to work with the rhythm, adjusting our strategies based on cycle phase, symptom load, and compass domain, it's time to talk about personalization. Because syncing to your biology gets even more powerful when you can track it, test it, and tailor it to your unique terrain. In women's health, personalization is often overcomplicated, either reduced to a one-size-fits-all advice that ignores hormonal patterns or turned into a data obsession with wearables, spreadsheets, and 14 different lab panels. But here's the truth. When you understand your body's signals, personalized doesn't have to mean complex. It means tuned in. Let's start with testing, the kind that helps you understand what phase your body's in, where your resilience might be breaking down, and what levers you can pull to feel better. Hormone testing, when to do it and what to look for. If you're feeling like your body's out of rhythm, whether you're cycling regularly, irregularly, or not at all, basic hormone testing can offer helpful clues. On a standard blood panel, these markers can tell a story: estradiol, E2, and progesterone. These help identify if ovulation is occurring and whether you're heading into perimenopause. FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone. High FSH with low estradiol may indicate ovarian aging or cycle disruption. DHEA, a marker of adrenal reserve, mood resilience, and libido. TSH, free T3, free T4, and reverse T3. Thyroid dysfunction, especially in women, is a silent rhythm breaker. Even normal values can cause issues if not optimal. Vitamin D, magnesium, and ferritin levels are often depleted in menstruating or stressed women and impact cycle regularity and energy. But testing is just one snapshot. It's not about chasing numbers, it's about contextualizing them within your lived experience. Symptom tracking and pattern recognition. This is where tracking apps and analog journaling comes in, not to micromanage your biology, but to help you recognize what's consistent, what's changing, and what's asking for attention. Apps like Clue, MyFlow, and Natural Cycles allow you to log menstrual cycle length and variation, PMS severity, sleep quality, energy, mood, libido, and food cravings. When paired with Compass awareness, these logs can reveal when you drift and what might be triggering it. Do your energy crashes always come mid-luteal? Did you get a migraine after a late night dinner and poor sleep? Do HIIT workouts feel amazing during your follicular phase but wreck you before your period? These aren't just annoyances, they're instructions. Cycle-aware programming, fitness, food, and rest. Once you know your signals, you can start to match your inputs to your physiology. During the follicular and ovulatory phases, you may feel stronger and more energetic. This is the time for more intense workouts, higher protein intake, and social engagement. In the luteal phase, your body needs more carbohydrates for progesterone production and serotonin balance. This is when you might prioritize rest-based movements like walking, yoga, and sleep support. During menstruation, scale back. Lean into gentle routines, iron replenishment, and reflection. Autophagy and repair are happening here. You don't need to push. The goal isn't to restrict or rigidly plan. It's to follow a rhythm that's already encoded in you. You don't need to track everything forever. You need to learn enough about your biology to know where you're drifting and when you're in sync. When personalization is done right, it feels less like a protocol and more like finally understanding the language your body's been speaking all along. You'll know that brain fog mid-month might be a signal to increase magnesium, that poor sleep before your period might be a call for more protein and earlier light exposure, that your bloating isn't random, it's part of a pattern. And now you have a map. Once you've begun tracking and tailoring your rhythms, the final piece is stepping back and seeing the pattern for what it really is, a biological rhythm that was never broken, just misread. And now that you're learning the language, it's time to bring it all together. Let's bring this full circle. Pun fully intended. Women's health isn't linear. It was never meant to be. It moves in phases, in tides, in predictable, powerful rhythms that Western medicine has mostly ignored and wellness culture has often misunderstood. So here's the truth. You're not too sensitive. You're not hormonal in the way they've made it sound. You are responsive, cyclical, and deeply intelligent, biologically and metabolically. And when your energy crashes, your moods swing, or your period symptoms spiral, it's not because you've failed. It's because your current strategy is mismatched with your biology. Most plans out there were built on male data, male rhythm, and male outputs. And you've probably tried to fit it yourself into those strategies. Intermittent fasting, daily intense workouts, high output productivity, or one-size-fits-all supplements, only to feel worse. But the truth is, when you sync your inputs with your cycle, you finally stop swimming upstream. That's why we built the Metabolic Compass, to help you sequence your health with precision, purpose, and compassion. In the Compass model, Nurture helps restore safety when inflammation, gut distress, or fragility show up, often in the luteal phase. Energize builds fuel and mitochondrial momentum, perfect for the follicular and ovulatory window. Withdraw honors rest and repair, especially during menstruation. Strengthen weaves through the full cycle, holding structure and repair in places while other systems ebb and flow. So here's your Compass check-in. Are you pushing through symptoms when your body is asking for pause? Are you stuck in the same protocol, regardless of where you are in your cycle? Or are you starting to hear the subtle shifts and finally aligning with them? If you're tired of guessing what your body needs, you don't have to anymore. Take the free drift quiz at themetaboliccompass.com/quiz. It'll show you exactly which compass domain is drifting and give you a 2-week reset that matches your biology, not someone else's protocol. And this work matters far beyond just your own energy, because in our next episode, we're turning the compass towards the next generation. In episode 35, we'll explore why kids and teens are drifting earlier than ever. We'll break down what's changing in their biology, how early drift shows up as symptoms, and what you can do right now to support your children's rhythm before symptoms become diagnoses. Because hormonal resilience starts young, and the compass can guide all of us at every age. You've been listening to the Metabolic Compass podcast, where we bridge cutting-edge science with real-life application to help you reclaim your health one directional shift at a time. To learn more, visit us at www.themetaboliccompass.com or follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Metabolic Compass. And if you haven't already, leave a review. It helps others find their way back to alignment too. Recalibrate your biology, rediscover your direction.